everybody, it is time now for the weekly matchup show. Oklahoma, after a lethargic performance but did get the victory 24-7 at Texas El Paso last Saturday, will try to play much better as they will host Florida A&M for the home opener for the Sooners. It'll be Oklahoma and the Florida A&M Rattlers Saturday, September the 8th for a 6 o'clock kickoff. And if you're wanting to watch the game on television, you'll need to fork out $39.95 of your hard-earned money because the game will be shown on pay-per-view. So either buy a ticket and go to the game, or pay your $40 and watch it at home, or see if a friend or a business is airing the game, or you can listen to it on the radio with Toby Rowland and Merv Johnson calling the action. There's no point spread for this game. The game's off the board. That's because Florida A&M is an FCS opponent. Before we get into Oklahoma, Florida A&M, and before we recap a bit of the OU UTEP game, I already had one viewer asked me why I didn't talk about the other action in college football last Saturday. Well, there's two reasons. Number one, I was not happy with the way Oklahoma played, as I'm sure many of you were as well, you Sooner fans. So my attention for that postgame was completely devoted to them. And then number two, we aired the show at 1:30 in the morning. It was a pretty late kickoff, and I was deadbeat tired from all the football I had watched all day and all night long. And so I was wanting to get that show done and in the books. And I had to get up for work early the next day, so really I was pressed for time in that particular situation. But I'll go ahead and recap week one of college football right now since I didn't get to earlier. We thought USC and Oregon would be dominant in their games, and they were. I can't wait for those two teams to play each other in early November at the Coliseum. And talking about the SEC, Alabama, my goodness, they had probably the best performance of the week considering that they beat a top 10 opponent and they pretty much didn't break a sweat while doing it. Bama loses 12 starters from the year before and they still look like the same team that they did in that national title game. So Bama going to be very difficult to beat, needless to say. In the SEC East, Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina, they struggled but did win their games. And maybe Tennessee can challenge in the East Division. Tyler Brade, he's got one heck of an arm. I like the things that Tennessee offensively did against a quality opponent in North Carolina State. The Big Ten had some struggles with Penn State losing to Ohio and also Michigan getting blown out the way they did against Bama and Iowa, as well as Wisconsin winning but struggling in doing so. And if you look at the Big East Conference, my goodness, there's a reason why nobody takes that league seriously. Pittsburgh loses at home to Youngstown State, an FCS team. Are you kidding me? And Syracuse losing in the heartbreaker in the last minute to Northwestern. By the way, the Big 12, how about them? A perfect 9 for 9. And by the way, one more thing too, props to Clemson there without Sammy Watkins, and they still were able to win in Atlanta against Auburn. So Clemson, once again, looks like they're in for a pretty good season as well. Getting back to the Big 12, yeah, they were favored to win all their non-league games on Saturday. Perfect 9 for 9. TCU didn't play. They'll open up the season this upcoming weekend. So the Big 12 looking good for the most part. Of course, Oklahoma struggled like crazy. Had some inconsistencies on offense, as Bob Stoops mentioned during his press conference on Monday. They did give up 3 sacks. 2 of those sacks, though, he didn't really blame on the offensive line. He thought that Landry Jones could have gotten rid of those balls in adequate time. And if you look at the defensive side, he really didn't think that his defense, as far as the run, did that bad. He just thought that his defensive ends were out of place, didn't stay at home. And he also said that the tackling at times was not terrific. They need to tackle better. So I don't think Bob Stoops is quite as pessimistic about the result of the game as maybe some of us were. He knows that they've got to improve, but he also knows, too, that you can't read into one game as far as the entire season. He mentioned last year against Tulsa, they won the game 47-17 and ended up winning 10 and lost 3 and didn't win a conference title last year. So you can't always read into the season opener. And I'll go back to 2 years ago when the Sooners beat Utah State, but only beat them by a touchdown after being heavily favored. And then 6 years ago, opening the season against Alabama Birmingham and almost losing that one, winning 31-24. By the way, both of those years, 2006 and 2010, Oklahoma ended up winning the Big 12. So you can't read too much into one game. I'll agree with that. But simply put, the offensive and defensive lines have got to get better. Once that happens, then I think you'll see Oklahoma start living up to that billing. And it was the first game. Naturally, it caught a lot of people off guard what happened in El Paso, but could have been worse, could have been a loss if UTEP knew how to kick field goals. Who knows how that game would have played out. But still, Oklahoma got the win, and the main thing you're looking for this Saturday against Florida A&M is simply improvement, because you don't have to worry about Oklahoma losing this one, but the big thing you're looking for is improvement. If you don't know who he is, he's the terrific running back from OU who actually started after Dominic Whaley got hurt last season, but yet Finch didn't play an offensive play against UTEP on Saturday, never touched the ball, never saw action. So you knew a reporter was going to ask, why didn't Roy Finch play? And here was Bob Stoops' response.
Well, the other guys, we play who we feel is set to play the best for us right now. And so you want to ask about why another 90 guys didn't play? I mean, we play who we feel is set to play. There's no specific reason other for it from today through the end of the year. Guys play who we feel are in the best position to play at the time. So I'll repeat that answer from here to the end of time.
Yeah. I didn't want to ask about 90 other guys because Roy was the starting running back at the end of the year last year.
Okay, well, he isn't today.
When you went on the road to Florida State a year ago.
And Dominic was the starting running back until he got hurt, if you remember.
Oh, my goodness. You could tell that Roy Finch is a very sore subject to talk about. And if Bob Stoops is that way toward us in the media when it comes to Roy Finch, you can only imagine how Stoops and the coaching staff are with Roy Finch in private. From what I've heard, co-offensive coordinator Jay Norvell said that the reason why you didn't see Finch play against UTEP was two reasons. One was because of poor practice habits, and number two, film study. They're not happy at all right now with Roy Finch because of the effort or lack thereof. Bottom line is, just because you're a big name for Oklahoma, just because you started last year, just because you might have been a huge name in high school, that doesn't buy you a ticket toward playing time. You have to earn it, and you have to earn it all the time. 4 running backs carried the ball for the Sooners on Saturday. Trey Millard, fullback, carried it, as well as Whaley, as well as Clay, as well as Damian Williams. You did not see Finch carry the ball. You didn't even see him line up in the slot, which is where we heard that Finch is going to be playing a lot of this year from the slot. But no Roy Finch, and I've got to think he's going to play here pretty soon. Either that or Finch's practice habits and film study are going to keep him from getting some playing time. That's really a shame because I still think he has terrific breakaway ability. And right now it's up to Finch as to whether or not he wants to be committed because, the coaches are expecting more from him than what they're seeing so far. Now, let's talk a little bit about Florida A&M. The Rattlers lost a close game this last week to their rivals from Tennessee State, 17-14. Florida A&M actually had a chance to win down 17-0. They cut the lead to 3, but the quarterback, Damian Fleming, was stopped just shy of the goal line on the sneak, and Florida A&M lost a heartbreaker. Probably what hurt Florida A&M in the game was the poor start, plus the fact that they only had 270 yards of total offense. Fleming, by the way, did have a big run in that game, a 65-yard run, but that was pretty much it as far as big plays for the Rattlers. Florida A&M, they're going to run a spread offense, but again, don't be fooled because Fleming can take off with the ball. Defensively, we're going to see some 3-man and some 4-man fronts for the Rattlers, but bottom line is they're an FCS school. This will be a talent mismatch, and I know OU should have blown UTEP out last week, but I think from Oklahoma this week, they're going to make a lot of corrections, in particular on the defensive lines where Stoops in his press conference said that some of those big runs were attributed to the defensive ends more so than the tackles for the ends not being lined up in the right spot, playing too far upfield, not staying at home, and also tackling. He said that the tackling was not terrific for the Sooners on Saturday. Poor tackling. So those are things that can be corrected. Offensive line-wise, we're going to see just how improved Oklahoma will be from last week to this week. I think this is one of those games where, again, the Sooners are going to win. They're going to win big, but they're really going to be playing against themselves in this game and not against anybody in particular. Watch Landry Jones. He looked good on his feet this past week. Looked good outside the pocket, but he's got to get rid of the ball a little bit quicker. Stoops says that 2 of those 3 sacks that OU gave up was primarily on Jones. Should have got rid of the ball earlier because he did have time to throw on 2 of those 3 quarterback sacks. There's not going to be 4 keys to the game because really that's not worth breaking down for a matchup that's this much of a mismatch. The biggest thing for Oklahoma will be improvement. That's the one key for this ball game. Look, you got Kansas State coming up in 2 weeks, and if you thought UTEP ran the ball well, wait till you see Kansas State with Hubert, the running back, and of course Colin Klein at QB, and that dangerous zone read offense that K-State runs. Of course, that's on September 28th. So you got this week against Florida A&M to work some kinks out. You got the bye week next week, and of course Kansas State for the Big 12 opener to close out September. I say Oklahoma in this one. I'm going to go 52-7. I do think OU will play better. I don't think playing a team like Florida A&M makes you better, but I do think for Oklahoma, they have to play against themselves, and they have to seek improvement on both sides of the ball, and also on special teams too, in particular on punting, protecting Tress Way. Special teams, you just hope it's not one of those things that cost Oklahoma a game or 2 down the road. It did that a few years ago against Texas, and you're just hoping that they can get those special teams things worked out. Final score, again, I've got OU winning easily 52-7. Remember, the game's on pay-per-view, so get ready to shell out $40 if you want to watch the game from the comforts of your own home. That does it for the weekly matchup show. My wrap-up show for Oklahoma and Florida A&M will be sometime Saturday evening. Boomer Sooner.